Morning. It's a Thursday. It's Jeremy and Joe. Sal Capaccio joining now on the Westher Hotline as we inch closer to free agency. We're within a week now. Legal tampering in a couple of days as well. Morning, Sal. Did you make sure you recycle in garbage, or I don't know if it was garbage night for you, but it was everywhere on the streets when I was driving to work this morning.
You know, we had it yesterday. We had garbage yesterday, so it was all taken care of. And then I pulled the cans back yesterday afternoon. This morning, though, we have patio furniture out front this morning, and we have a cover, and the cover was off. You know, it was gone, so we had to go out there and recover it. You know, that kind of thing, right? So
it wasn't gone.
So
though.
Hey, no, it wasn't gone. It was good. Just luckily it was still on the porch. I had to cover the furniture though. So yeah, it was pretty windy this morning, no doubt. My thing was looking out this morning going, I can't believe after the last 2 days we had, and we have some like snow on the ground or whatever, after the last 2 days we had.
That there's still some on the ground? Oh.
No, there was like a dusting of something, it looked like. It looked like some
right.
sort of frost, I guess, snow, whatever. I don't know what do you want to call it, but after the last 2 days we had, I'm like, it was new, essentially.
Yeah, I'm like afraid to look ahead on the look-ahead weather, so I'm just going to take it as it comes at this point. Like if it snows again, it can't possibly, could it? Of course it could. It's March 6th.
Joe, what, before you were born, I'll say that was the. I know this is like I think it was 1989. I'll check with Pat Hammer. I think the year was 1989. Mm-hmm. We had a snowstorm on Mother's Day in May.
Okay, yeah, that's in May.
In May on Mother's Day in May.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard this reference, but every time it comes up, I'm like, wait, really? That's a real thing?
It's true happening. Because I remember the driving, like my mom, and for sure. It was it was a snowstorm. I think it was 1989. I was still in high school, but I think that's like a reference point people talk about sometimes. Like, hey, it's snow. We had a snowstorm on Mother's Day one time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I won't put it past the skies. Then maybe we'll get more snow.
Yeah.
So since we last had you on, Sal, there are 3 new receiver ideas, maybe more than that. There's at least 3. So this is going to be the offseason, I think, more of defense and edge rusher and Max Crosby off the market. He signs yesterday, but Garrett is still an idea. But I mean, we've got this Metcalf trade stuff. We've got Devontae Adams now available, and you might think the Bills tried at least to get him during the season. Christian Kirk is available, and he's like best friends with Josh Allen. So I don't know what one of those 3 names is the one you're thinking the most about. Is it just Metcalf because he's the best of them?
Sure. I just think that the cost would be high, and the new contract would be high. And I like the player a lot, and he's still, he's relatively young, right? He's 28, I think, right? He's got years left here.
27, yeah. 27.
27. Going to be 28 this year maybe for the season. But either way, yeah, he's right there, prime, years. So for sure. But I mean, what the reporting is this morning, they want a first and a third. They're not getting a first and a third. Any team does that. I mean, wow, they must really want him because Debo, now I'm not comparing the 2 players, but Debo went for a 5th, and you just have to at least something gauge the market for what receivers go for. And we've seen receivers traded in the past, and whether that's at the trade deadline, even with the Bills and Amari Cooper or other guys who've gone, DeAndre Hopkins. Now obviously DK is better and younger than these guys, but this is not a robust trade market for wide receivers. You don't give up a number 1 for a guy like that. So I don't think that's going to happen. That being said, like what is the price point, and then what kind of a contract? The other report was he's looking for $30 million a year. Mm-hmm. I mean, listen, if I don't know. I'm not saying it has to be. I've seen a lot of people say if it's a choice between, and it doesn't have to be a choice between. But if you only had so many dollars and so much draft capital, I think you put it all as still to try and get Myles Garrett before you do something like DK Metcalf. But if you're talking to me about which receiver I'd rather have, yes, I'd rather have DK Metcalf than the other guys. Christian Kirk is primarily a slot receiver. He's also been hurt a lot. And yes, I tweeted out yesterday, same thing you said. Hey, he's really good friends with Josh Allen, one to monitor. And so many people came back with, no way, don't want him. He's a slot receiver. I get it. I'm not telling you that they should. I'm just telling you that that's how things work sometimes, right? They work out in the offseason. They see each other a lot, might have that relationship. Doesn't mean you'd bring him here on a big deal. Maybe you bring him in as hey, you fight for a spot. If there's a spot and someone gets hurt in camp or something like that, we can find a spot on the field for you. So, yeah, I think, they're all at different levels on how you treat this, but DK certainly is the best of the bunch.
Yeah, Kirk, I was thinking it was almost funny that, so he's at Josh Allen's bachelor party 2 nights ago, and they were pictured at the TGL match, and, if that carries on, I don't know what their plans would have been yesterday, but, is Josh with Kirk when he gets released by the Jaguars? Because if your buddy just became available, what are you, this doesn't have to mean anything to what Bean does, but what are you probably saying to him? Like, oh, you're available now, huh? Like, all right, you got to come up to Buffalo. Like, of course they would have been talking about it if they were together yesterday. But like you said, more of a slot guy. I think you got to go back to 2020 to find the last season that he played more on the outside than the inside. So it would be more trying to convince everyone that he can do more on the outside, but you don't have the results basically to back that up. Isn't Metcalf, like, if we put the price for the contract and the trade price aside for a moment, is he not like the perfect type of receiver, Sal, for what you think the Bills would be looking for?
Yeah, as opposed to DK, where it seems, as opposed to Christian Kirk, where it feels like, it's a little bit more redundant of things they have, whether that's Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, who you could put there, get the ball in his hands. I think DK is the guy that they've kind of been searching for here, even with Keon Coleman's draft pick last year. And that started to go really well. And we know that, at the end of the year, we know what Sean McDermott has said and Brandon Beane has said. And you're hoping he's going to take a step. But certainly I think that is the kind of receiver you need, a big, powerful guy on the outside that can win in man-to-man situations. And he can really win in any situation. No doubt about it. Back to Kirk for a minute, though. Look, I don't think Christian Kirk's going to cost a lot of money. And they bring, 13 to 15 receivers to camp? Right? If I told you right now, Joe, you could get Christian Kirk for kind of not much more than a minimum deal, which I don't think he's going to make a ton on the open market. And if you could get him for a really low price and say, look, come to camp and fight for a spot, is there a downside to that? I don't think there is.
Yeah, I don't think there is either. I'll be curious to see what he gets. The only thing in his corner might be that it's a weak receiver free agent class. So maybe he finds his way to something that's maybe closer to the Curtis Samuel deal. But I don't know. I might be wrong on that. Maybe it's a Mac Hollins deal for Kirk. In general, what would you say to the idea, because I get this a lot, that the Bills they're not in the market for a number one wide receiver. That Everybody Eats was great, and they were second in the league in scoring, and the way that they want to play offense, they just don't have a desire to have a guy that's, what's the right way to put it, that good, that type of role. What would you say to that? Like the Bills' kind of motivation from that standpoint, less about the player individually, more about kind of the philosophy of acquiring a player like that.
The philosophy I think is going to be more so of what it was last year, which is Everybody Eats. However, I think if they have an opportunity to get a guy that we really feel can help and be that guy, and it's the right fit, they would do it. And maybe DK is that guy. But I do think they'll go more towards looking at the philosophy of last year. Everybody Eats. We just need Curtis Samuel and Keon Coleman to be better than they were, and Dalton Kincaid, by the way, to be better than they were, and to have, step up in, whether it's availability or how we're going to use them. To think about what they said about Dalton Kincaid and, the blurb from Matthew Berry. I don't know if you saw this. I talked about this on Extra Point Show yesterday. Matthew Berry said he talked to a Bills source who said Dalton was a lot more hurt than people realized. And, he'll be a sleeper next year, like a big bounce back year. And I think the Bills really feel that about Dalton Kincaid. I think they feel that about Curtis Samuel, that his injury really hampered him last year, and he wasn't able to really get going the way they wanted him to. And then we have the Keon Coleman situation. Now, it's a lot to sit here, though, and Joe, and bank on all three of those guys just being healthy and being what you thought they'd be, right? I mean, like that's a lot of hoping and wishing. I get it. But I do think they believe that, and that would really feed more into the Everybody Eats philosophy. And, oh, by the way, Keon Coleman going into his second year, he should just take a jump anyway, and he'll be a lot better. And so would Dalton Kincaid going into his third year, which we've seen. That said, if there's a guy that comes available and you're like, wait a minute, that's the kind of guy we really like here, that we really need, is that DK Metcalf or somebody? I think they would pivot and say, you know what? I think we'll do it. We'll go out and try and get a guy like that. I think it would take the right person to really alter that philosophy.
Right. The other point to be made there, in fact, I think Barry wrote about this too, that another thing that he had heard was from a Bill source that, Amari Cooper might, like, his days as a number one receiver are probably done, was the sentiment. Mm-hmm. And they wanted him, like they traded a day 2 pick for him, and that came minutes after Devontae Adams was traded to the Jets. So, You can wonder if they were close to pulling that move off. Bean had referenced moves that he almost made. He never got specific. And he had 1 million catches for the Jets. So on some level, there is also that action. Like, he did not play a ton or catch 1 million balls in comparison to what he had done before. But they did go and get him. And had he been as good as Adams, or had he just been healthier throughout the process because of the wrist injury, I wonder how that would have us thinking differently too, Sal. That they did go address the position in the middle of the year with an asset that wasn't nothing.
I'm looking here right now. Devontae Adams still did have 1,000 yards last year. Isn't that wild?
Oh, how many targets did he have with the Jets? It was 1 million, wasn't it?
Yeah, he had 114 in 11 games.
Right, that's insane.
He did have 1,000 yards. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons, but he's a few years removed from 1,500, right?
Yeah.
And he is going to be 33 this season. So I think there's a lot of things. I saw some numbers the other day about how a lot of the analytics numbers have really dipped over the last couple of years for him. But again, bad situation. Maybe quarterback Aaron Rodgers, his numbers have dipped as well. So I think you have to really kind of thread that needle and think, who is he now? What do you expect from him now? But it's certainly possible the Bills feel that Devontae Adams could be still a guy that can really produce. And Amari Cooper's an interesting one. He is a free agent that they brought in, as you said. He's going to be a free agent. They traded for him. They really liked him here in Buffalo. Unfortunately, he had the wrist injury, and it just never really was able to kind of come to fruition, I think, the way they totally wanted it to. But I also don't think, Joe, that they brought him to Buffalo to become this true target-eating guy. What they really wanted was a guy who could step up in big situations, be there available, and allow everybody else to kind of fill a role a little bit better. And in a way, that did happen. It just never fully happened, I think, the way they wanted. Now you get to free agency. I'm interested what kind of deal Amari Cooper is going to get in free agency. I wouldn't rule him out coming back to the Bills. I don't think I'd say it's less likely than it is more likely that he comes back to the Bills, but I will also tell you, from the people I talked to in that building, they loved his professionalism, how he went about his business, and if the Bills feel that Amari Cooper can still maybe not be number one receiver, but still be a contributing receiver, I think that he checks all the other boxes for them.
Right. Almost to mean also that, had they traded for Adams during the season instead of Cooper, he might have given them more than Cooper, but he wouldn't have had 114 targets in 11 games.
That's exactly right. That's right, yeah. So I look at, and then you did bring up Mac Hollins, by the way.
Yeah.
Again, I know Mac Hollins really liked being in Buffalo, and the Bills liked having Mac Hollins. It just feels like it's something that will happen again. But who knows? Maybe a team really liked what he did on special teams as well and said we could really use that here, and gives him a bigger offer than the Bills are willing to give.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline. All right, there's a lot on receiver. There's a lot of receiver things happening. Metcalf available. But last thing on that, and then we'll move on. I want to get a little bit more on what's coming in the next few days. It's at least a good sign that the Seahawks are even willing to kind of talk shop. Right? Cleveland's not willing to talk still on Garrett. And even though the price might be too high, the fact that they're kind of willing to go down this road, all right, you want to be traded? We'll let you talk to other teams. We'll put a price out there. That makes me think it's more likely than not that he actually will get dealt. Versus, you got Garrett over here. You can't get Andrew Berry on the phone still, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's two differences here, right? Which is, the Myles Garrett says, I want to be traded, and he's very public about it.
Yep.
And the Browns are not even any sort of interest in doing that publicly, at least. We're not trading him. Now you have reporting that the Seahawks are oh yeah, we'll do it for this. So right. It feels like this is a separation between the two. This is not just the player saying, I want to be traded. It's also the team saying, okay, we'll do that. And if you believe the reporting on that. So for sure, I think that as opposed to Garrett, it feels like Metcalf is actually available right now. I think that Garrett still could be available. I just think that it's going to take something to force the hand and them to realize that that's pretty much what they have to do in the road they have to go down as much as they want to try. So no doubt about that. And I guess the question for teams would be, how you operate if you just don't know or don't think Myles Garrett will become available, even if you're very interested. And, whether that's the Bills or anybody else, they have to kind of answer that question. So to me, you have to kind of go forward with your plan. You have to just do what you do in the offseason. You have to make your plans. You cannot be beholden to, oh my God, we might get Myles Garrett, so we can't, operate over here and get these other guys, because if that doesn't happen, then, you kind of screwed yourself over a little bit. So, yeah, it's really interesting. I agree with you, Joe. I think what you just said, though, that it feels like DK will be traded. And then Tyler Lockett got released as well, right? I mean, he's an interesting guy. By the way, today at 10:30 on the Extra Point Show, we're going to actually talk with Nico Tamurian out in Seattle. He is actually he's a Western New Yorker, went to Buff State, worked in Syracuse for a long time. He's been out in Seattle for quite a while. He covers all the Seattle sports scene, does a great job. I believe sports director out there at one of the TV stations. But Nico's going to come aboard at 10:30 to talk about this situation and where it went wrong, where it is now, and where it ultimately might wind up.
All right, so stay tuned for that at 10:30. So for the next few days, Sal, there's been a lot of action in the league. CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, guys are getting restructured. You got the trade stuff happening that we just kind of went through. From the Bills' end of things, like how on alert should we be for news in the next few days? Like they not even necessarily mean like, oh well, they'll have to extend guys. But they could, right? And they have to do something, right? Because they're still over the cap ahead of the League New Year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can add Joey Bosa to that, right? I mean, he got released overnight, right? I think it was overnight, basically.
Yes. Yep.
There's been other guys that have been getting released from their teams, and, where it's Darius Slay. There's guys coming out talking about, I think it's CJ, was the guy for the Eagles, Chauncey Gardner. He's talking about a new contract or whatever, Gardner Johnson, sorry, yeah. And, maybe that doesn't go well. So it feels to me, I was thinking about this morning, Joe, while the free agent class on expiring contracts doesn't feel like it's this super big group, it feels like maybe there's more guys that are becoming available from their own teams, whether that's via trade or via release over the last several years. And that could happen with the Bills. So, yeah, the Bills have to be, like all teams, under the 2025 salary cap by next Wednesday at 4 p.m. They can contact the agents of pending free agents, other teams, starting Monday at noon. So we could get news today, tomorrow, like other teams, that they're making, that they're extending guys, lowering cap numbers, that they're releasing guys. Last year, we got the release of all those players they released a week before, which now we're within that time period. But let's remember, maybe there's things they're trying to do and they don't know, and they're going to wait until Monday to talk to agents of teams and go, oh, we're going to sign this guy? Well, guess what? Now we need to release this guy, right? They don't have to do it now. They can wait as long as possible. My sense is that we'll hear some news on something today, tomorrow, into the weekend, but they don't have to do everything they did last year necessarily. And they can also wait as long as they want, because they can make other moves happen or know that things are happening before they make the moves they have to make themselves. And they can sign their own pending free agents at any time, by the way. So whether that's Matt Collins or Amari Cooper, anybody else, if the Bills, DeJuan Smoot, Ty Johnson, there's some names that you might want to bring back. The Bills can do that at any time, but anybody who's on an expiring contract from another team, they cannot talk to that player's agent until Monday at 12 p.m.
Right, and there's a lot of moves they can make to help get themselves under the cap. What is the one you would expect to be the most likely? Whether that's an extension or a release or a restructure, like what's the one of those that you think is the most likely?
Oof. It's a great question. I guess Von Miller would be the one, but I still think there's a possibility Von Miller stays on a reduced. How about this? I would say something with Von Miller's contract. All right.
Okay.
I just between now and Wednesday, I can't see him on the same contract. That might be a release. That might be another pay cut, a restructure. I also think something with Josh Allen is going to happen. So I think those two, the contracts of those players. Now, it could be just completely gone with Von, whether that's June 1 or it's now. But if it's June 1, you're saving money, but not until June 1, right? So that's number one. I think Von, I think Josh, those contracts. I think the extension stuff is interesting because, to me, the easiest way to shed money now and with an extension would be Greg Rousseau. He's due over $13 million. I mean, they were able to lower a $3 million Shakir cap hit to 2-something. They could lower a $13 million cap hit to 3, let's say, and save $10 million like that. The question is, Joe, if you do extend Rousseau, how much is he getting, and are you willing to do that?
Right.
Yeah, you can shed that money with an extension, but that means you're giving him an extension, and he's going to probably get over $20 million a year, I would think, with the market.
I'm trying to think. Have they let anybody play on that fifth-year option number without extending them?
Tremaine Edmonds.
Okay, right. Sure. Right, because he walks away. Yeah. And that would have been a big number at the time, but they didn't want to pay him. Right.
That's right. Tremaine Edmonds played on the fifth-year option, became a free agent, signed with the Chicago Bears. So it is possible. But if the Bills want to have a quick, kind of swift, of the pen to get under the cap and extend somebody, the easiest guy to do that with is Greg Rousseau. Now, you can extend Christian Benford or Terrell Bernard, and you could, or even James Cook, and you can save a little bit of money. You're not saving nearly what you could save if you do it with Greg Rousseau, is the point.
Right. You definitely picked out the right three. If you add up Allen, Von Miller, and Rousseau's cap hits as they currently stand, it's $81 million. Yes. And there is no way that number will be $81 million in a week. I mean, it might be half of that, honestly. Right? That's
exactly right. So we'll see how it all plays out for sure.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline. All right, so he's got the Extra Point Show coming up. At 10:30, you've got the Seattle guest. And what else?
Yeah, that's Nico Tamurian. And then Matt Bove is going to join me at 11. Matt and I do the Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast, of course, right? But we don't really talk on the radio as much. And when we do Always Game Day, it's mostly about the Bills. It's all about the Bills. But we'll talk Sabres, too, because obviously the trade deadline is tomorrow. I listened to Josh in the update, and then it dawned on me, and something I've been thinking about. You might have talked about this. I don't know. The Capitals have 11 games before they play the Sabres, and Ovechkin's 10 goals away.
He could do it against the Sabres. It lines up pretty. I mean, he's got 32 goals in 46 games. He's scoring at a rate where it could be the Sabre game.
I mean, it would outpace what he's doing now. There's no doubt.
Yeah,
he would need. That's the 11th game from now that they play. He needs 10 goals, right, to do it.
Yeah.
So he'd have to have 10 goals in 11 games. And, all he needs is a hat trick in one game, which he's Ovi. He could do something like that. And, for everybody who might not realize, Wayne Gretzky broke the single-season goal record in Buffalo. I mean, that happened. Right. And, Ovechkin, he could have a look at it. I don't know. I think it's an outside shot, but he could have a look at it. That game, by the way, in Buffalo is March 30th.
Sal Capaccio.
It's a 3 p.m. afternoon game.
Is that in Buffalo or is that in Washington? I thought it was in Washington. I might be wrong, though.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. What's the one in Buffalo? I'm looking at the wrong one then. No, okay.
I think they're done in Buffalo this year. I don't think Washington comes to Buffalo.
Oh, okay. Whew. All right. It could be against the Sabres. My fault. I was looking at, you know why, Joe? I looked at the Capital schedule, not the Sabres, so it didn't have the at.
Right. That makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right. But it could be against the Sabres. That's correct.
Thank you, Sal.
You got it.
Sal Capaccio on the West Her Hotline. Stay tuned for the Extra Point Show coming up at 10 o'clock. Metcalf and the Bills. Is it the perfect fit? We will get to some hockey as well, so stay tuned. We'll have a guest coming up at 9 o'clock for more on the Seahawks. Mike Lefko is going to join coming up at 9, so stay tuned. This is WGR.